I believe we are live. I believe. Oh, look, she's smiling already. So she's in a good mood. So welcome, everybody. This is the You Heard Me podcast episode
16?
16. She's correct.
Okay.
Episode 16. Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday evening. Happy to be here with you. We are also streaming in full high definition now. I figured out how to do that. Although Instagram didn't work out, I'm trying to figure out also how to make the quality better of our streams. So I believe you can stream in HD format now. Just correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll figure it out for next week. But we are trying to make adjustments where we can for the benefit of the podcast. So thank you for bearing with us as we make these adjustments. We are 16 episodes in, and we are so excited to be here with you and answering your questions. So the lead-in podcast is a little bit of a segue from the last podcast, but I wanted to further go into detail about what we talked about in terms of how sometimes we can feel guilty as dog owners and how we can sometimes drive our dogs to develop the issues to which we were hoping to avoid in the first place. So the segue of the last podcast to this podcast is I also wanted to just kind of clarify and say that, you know, a lot of that pressure is not, well, it's not obviously some of it we put on ourselves, but it also comes from outside forces as well. And so I just had a phone call, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, with a client and their dog. And basically what happened was they were being or feeling pressured from their vet, the people around them, and basically saying that they weren't doing enough. And so this is a really big problem. This is why I wanted to continue to expand on this issue, is that yes, while we are hard on ourselves, other people don't make it easy. And so a lot of times the first touch point is a vet. And I'm finding, and I'm having a lot of conversations, again, this is not a knock on vets, but I'm having a lot of conversations with owners where vets are rushing to put dogs on medication because the dog just, whatever the reason, can't sit still or what have you. And that is an issue because the dog just needs to learn how to sit still for like a few moments. The dog doesn't need Prozac. The dog does not need something put in their front of their face every 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need a snuffle mat every 5 seconds or a Kong toy every 5 seconds. Now, these things are great in moderation, but what happens is these outside forces, whoever might be, whether it's a vet or a friend or whatever, that's basically saying to these owners, you're not doing enough, is the reason why a lot of that pressure is falling on their shoulders. And then the dog turns into this super hyperactive dog that can't sit still for 5 seconds. So this is a problem. And it is a problem that we are encountering every single day. And it's something that we're going to be talking about a lot because all these types of dogs need is to learn how to just lay down for like an hour and watch how quickly the issues start fading away. Not because you're keeping your dog still all day, but because you're teaching your dog the moderation of it, right? And so, yes, obviously a dog that has boundaries isn't going to be able to misbehave because they have boundaries, or if they're staying still, how are they going to misbehave? Yes, of course, but what you're not seeing is what you're teaching them mentally, how to be calm. And so a dog that practices calmness routinely every day is going to be less likely to shoot to the moon, right? So yes, keeping your dog still, yeah, okay, how can they do the jumping and everything else? Sure, but think about what you're teaching mentally, because the mental part of it is something that you can't see, and that is so important, right? Think about us, right? There are times where we, have to sit still and write an email or, what have you. And I always bring up the yoga metaphor, but sometimes stillness is the best thing for a human even to be able to gather their thoughts and decompress. So again, wanted to expand on that a little bit, but that is extremely important for dogs that are hyperactive. And no, 99% of the time, your dog does not need Prozac. And I literally just had a phone call with somebody the other day, and they're like, we were recommended Prozac, and I feel like my dog doesn't need it. And I agree with them because I don't think the dog needs it. And some dogs benefit from meds. I'm not going to say that it's a blanket statement, but most dogs that we see that come to us, it's because the owner was guilted into constantly putting something in front of the dog's face to stop them from misbehaving. And that's not a solution. You're only feeding the fire. You are fueling the fire, and it's not going to help. So anyway, that's my little spiel there. How are you doing today? Doing a check-in.
Good.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, this is my beautiful wife, Alyssa. Okay.
Thank you.
And we are here today. We're going to answer your questions, and we are going to get into it now. So let's foray. I don't even think that's the right word for that, but that's okay.
I don't know what that means.
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Okay. What are some creative ways we can exercise a reactive dog? Both people and dog reactive. Constantly having to avoid public environments for this reason.
Yeah, well, Alyssa and I ran into this with Layla. And for those of you that don't know, Layla is our dog who had a lot of reactivity. And so when we were going through this journey ourselves, we had to get creative of picking places around town that weren't very active. She was also people and dog reactive as well. So we've also been there, and we can relate to this. Essentially, yes, you have to get creative. So you have to drive around your town. You know, this is what Alyssa and I did. I could still remember it like it was yesterday. And we were looking around buildings and schoolyards and areas where, you know, we could just let her off. And the probability of running into another dog was very slim. You know, so yes, while you're working on getting your dog the help that they need to get them outside and you know, I don't know if you live in an apartment, you might not have a backyard. So you're going to have to get creative there. Some tennis courts, you know, if you're afraid of your dog running off, or you could put a 20-foot lead on them, you know, a long line. And so you can do all those things. But yes, it does involve getting creative. Look at some schools. Some schools don't allow dogs on property. Some do. Some tennis courts don't. Some do. So just make sure you're following the local rules of your town and the quote unquote ordinances. But yeah, it is going to involve driving around but I would say schoolyards are good. You know, a lot of people go to because they're just so expansive. You know, you have all the fields and things like that. So that's very helpful. So I would look there and just drive around. I mean, some buildings have like large grassy areas, and you could even go to them and just be like, hey, like, can I just throw the ball here? You know, and just ask them, and we're not bothering anybody. They may say no, but they may say yes. And then the last thing is there's an app called Sniff Spot. And I think you can rent out like somebody's backyard, just like you could like an Airbnb, just for yards for your reactive dog. And like I think you can rent it by the hour. And so that's certainly something that you could do as well.
So much with that.
You could also, if you don't know this, you could also do that with swimming pools. So we've done that with our board and train dogs, where we'll rent like a swimming pool. If like the goal is related to water or something like that, we'll rent a swimming pool, and that app is called Swimply. So you have Sniff Spot for the yard and Swimply for the pool, and Airbnb for the entire house. I was thinking of doing one for like if you wanted to rent somebody's kitchen, you know, like you wanted to entertain, you have a small kitchen, you want to like have like throw a party. But then I'm thinking like
you could really do it for anything.
But then I'm thinking like, well, why wouldn't you just rent the whole thing, the whole house? Yeah. You know, but I mean, I'm always thinking of like, well, you have the pool, you have the yard, you have the whole house. What other elements of the house can you create an app for? Call it like kitschy. There's Swimply, Sniff Spot.
Why are you giving away ideas?
Well, because I don't have the time for any of this. So whatever. Anyway, next.
Okay. My dog snapped at my uncle the other night when he went to sit down on the couch. They've been around each other numerous times, so he knows him. Not sure why it was an issue last week, but it was enough to startle us. Oh, was the dog on the couch?
Well, why do you need to? I'm telling you,
what?
You need to stop doing that.
What?
Alyssa has this like reactionary to some questions and just no compassion at all. So,
well,
you know,
you would have brought that up.
Yeah, I would have brought it up, but you know, in a maybe a little bit of a less reactionary state.
Oh.
However, that's
I guess
okay.
I'm reactive.
Well, she just did it again. She just proved my point. So, but I know obviously Alyssa's joking. But no, I mean, honestly, sometimes this happens, you know, well, what happens is, and I don't know if the dog was sleeping, or sometimes dogs will get startled and they're like kind of disoriented and they'll snap. You never want to bother a resting dog. To Alyssa's point, what she was just saying here is that you want to, well, if dogs are snapping on the couch, you want to start taking those luxuries away, because dogs will use that leverage to snap at people and lunge at people and bark and be reactive and all of that. Why did it happen all of a sudden? Who knows? Some dogs, when they feel overwhelmed by somebody's presence, won't act on how they feel. And a lot of times that will bottle up over time and signs are missed or body language is missed and the dog doesn't feel like what they're communicating is being heard, and they just up the ante. So who knows, maybe the past handful of times your dog was bothered but just didn't act on it. And I don't know the relationship, and likely, something happened there. Dogs just don't like lash out at people for no reason. And so, my question is like, has your dog ever done this to anybody, period, before, not just your uncle? And so our job is to try to create patterns of behavior. And so when I have a phone call, when I get a question like this on a phone call, I have more questions than answers. But by the end of the phone call, I have it all put together. So, I'm asking, what is the pattern of the behavior? Has the dog ever done this before? If so, where and when? Has it always been on a raised surface? If it's been other people, who has it been? Has it been people the dog has known? Has it been strangers?
Mm-hmm.
Have they done it only inside or have they done it outside? So these are all questions that I would ask. And like I said, I would be piecing all of these things together to find a trend line. And likely by the end, I'm able to provide a recommendation. But I have more questions than answers right now. But the most common one that I experience is the dog a lot of times was communicating. It just wasn't being picked up on. And then the dog finally was like, all right, this is my corner of the couch. Tired of this, and I'm going to snap at you. And likely this isn't going to go away. This is probably going to continue to happen because behaviors like this just don't flutter away. And they also just don't happen overnight either. So usually when I dig deeper, I find more reasoning behind the dog's behavior. But this one, I would have to ask more questions.
Okay. Is there a reason behind hand feeding? We've seen some trainers recommend, and curious to hear your thoughts on this and if we should incorporate.
Yeah, so hand feeding is a great relationship builder. So basically, you are giving the most prized, valuable resource to your dog, and you're the one. It's a very active participant exercise. Okay, so you're hand feeding, the dog's eating out of your hand. I mean, I can't think of a better way to build a relationship, especially with a dog that could be a little bit weary of you. Don't obviously start that on day one. Just like run over to them with a handful of kibble and be like, hey, let's be friends. But over time, you could definitely take the edge off and also really build and strengthen your relationship with your dog through that way as well. Even just as an owner that's looking for ways to strengthen their bond, it is very helpful. It's something that we did with our dog, especially Layla when she was reactive. She was more responsive to us bringing her kibble on her walks. And so we found that using her food outside on walks was also very valuable. So that's something that you can look into. It's not necessary for every dog, but certainly for dogs that you want to build a stronger relationship with, yes. So again, think about it as, again, you're providing that their most prized resource, but typically for most dogs is their food, if they're food motivated. There are certainly dogs that are not food motivated that maybe hand feeding wouldn't make sense for. So, but yeah, definitely give it a shot, especially if your dog is motivated by food. If they're a grazer, probably not going to work, but you could build up their food motivation and you could work on doing that over time.
What is your opinion on the penny jar? What's the penny jar?
Oh, the penny jar. So the penny jar is it's an old school thing. And I've had people relay this to me, even like, I think one of our first neighbors years ago used a penny jar on her dog. Penny jar is just, you fill a jar, literally, with pennies, and it makes a loud noise. And if a dog is doing something you don't like, you throw it on the ground, and the dog just stops doing the thing. So it's very antiquated. I don't recommend it. I've heard people that of doing this, but I've also talked to people that have done this and have been recommended this from their friends and family and things like that. It's one of those just like old school things that people used to do that's just kind of startles the dog. And I don't really believe in just like startling just to stop a behavior. You're just creating fear. You know, if you're just like throwing things on the floor, you're not obviously you're not throwing it at the dog. You're just throwing it and making a sound. But to me, the more effective correction is like, let's say they're doing it because the dog is jumping on the counter. Okay. Condition e-collar correction. dog stops jumping. You didn't have to make a loud noise. You didn't have to startle the dog. You didn't have to scare the dog. You just correct the dog for jumping with an e-collar. Dog stops jumping. So to me, more fair, but it's amazing to me how people, and I'm not saying this person, but I'm sure there are owners out there that would rather create a loud noise than use an e-collar. But once they learn about e-collars, you actually realize that an e-collar is way more humane than like throwing a can of pennies on the floor. So that's my opinion on that. No judgment. I've definitely spoken to people that have done it in the past. They say it works. I don't do it because I don't think it's necessary. And we have other effective ways to correct behaviors. That's the penny jar.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How can I teach my dog to off-leash heel?
Well, you first want to teach your dog to on-leash heel. And the reason why I'm smiling is because we get this request a lot of like, I want to off-leash heel my dog. And especially if it's a dog that pulls a lot or pulls very strongly or is an incessant leash puller, off-leash heel shouldn't even be something that is being considered. If you can't walk your dog nicely on a leash and a heel, you're not going to be able to walk them off leash and a heel. So where most dogs that come to us cannot even be walked nicely on a leash. So we don't really get into off-leash heeling because just showing the owner how to walk their dog nicely on a leash is enough. You know, and using the leash and the technique and everything, that's pretty much of a pretty decent learning curve for your average dog owner. All right. Once they've mastered that, then yes, I am more than glad to show how to off-leash heel a dog. But I'm never going to give somebody an e-collar and go, hey, your dog is off-leash heeled, go downtown. That is super irresponsible. Most owners struggle just using the leash in the beginning, let alone an e-collar. So off-leash heel, I have a itch on my nose. Off-leash heel should be something that is more in the advanced territory that is graduated to when you've mastered how to use the leash, how to use the e-collar. That's the point to get into off-leash heeling. So there are many steps that have to be taken. So I would sort of recommend, and I don't know, but master on-leash heeling, master how to use an e-collar, and off-leash heeling will be a breeze for you. But just be prepared that you're going to have to go through a lot of training yourself on how to improve your timing, improve your leash handler skills. It takes a very special person, and I'm not saying it's impossible. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has more to do with honing in your skill set so that you can off-leash heel your dog without being a danger to your dog, safety, or what have you. Okay, so that's my take on that. That's what I would recommend. And so learn everything you can about the e-collar, learn everything you can about the leash, frontwards and backwards, then get into off-leash heeling. And off-leash heeling, when you teach a heel with the leash, you just work to phase the leash out. So that's why I'm saying start there, because it will be much easier for you if you learn everything leading up to it. So, yeah. Make sense?
Yes.
You look very nice today.
Thanks.
Like an angel. All white.
I'm wearing
and I'm wearing all black.
Here. I'm just wearing this because it's cold in here.
It's like yin and yang.
Can place be any surface?
I always recommend raised cots. I do know owners that use place on surfaces outside of the home. We use down instead because we want place to be a very clear inside, and in the backyard. That's fine too. But we want place to be raised pet cot. We use down for everything else. So, and we'll use like an up command. So up, the dog will jump up on something and then down, right? So
you shouldn't be using the couch as place.
No, well, definitely not. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I wouldn't be using furniture as your dog's place command. Certainly, I would be using a very clear boundary that is your dog's and your dog's only, for sure. And if it's outdoors, we find that using a down command is just as equally effective. Why, add shades of gray to your place command? Place command, raised cot.
Right.
Down when I need you to down.
Right.
That we see that works best.
Very good.
Thank you. Appreciate the validation, as always. I don't have my vitamin water today. I'm kind of upset about it.
Would you like some of mine?
Yes, please. Sharing is caring. Sharing is caring. You've gotten better at sharing.
Are there any leashes you recommend more over others?
I like the thinnest leash possible. No, I like a leash that's about that wide
Like flat?
and flat. I don't like rounded leashes. I don't like rope leashes. I don't like leashes that have poop bag holders on them. I carry poop bags in my pocket. Why don't I like poop bag holders on leashes? Because they just when you're using the leash to train and there's just one extra thing on there clanking around, it's distracting and it's cumbersome, right? So blank leash, nothing on it, like this wide, flat. It could fit in your hand easily. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the leash is such an important part of the training process. A lot of, and not for the fault of anybody, but a lot of owners are taught that the leash is just, okay, you put it on, you take your dog on a walk. And to the dog learns it as a restraint. It's actually the best communication tool you could teach your dog. And so you want to make sure that I'm glad that we got this question because, yeah, if you're going to be using it to communicate, use something that's easy to fit in your hand, that's lightweight. Lightweight is very important. I really like leashes that feel like air because if you're holding it, but depending on the circumstance, but yes, for the most case, and then something that's light because if you're going to be training with your dog multiple times per day, you don't want one of those heavy rope leashes. And it's amazing how the difference with a lighter leash, how you don't even it's like it's almost not even there. But especially if you're going to be using it a lot, right? And these things I understand why the rope leashes are used because you feel like you have a better grip. But if your dog's not pulling, which they aren't when we're training, right, then it doesn't matter anymore, right? And we're actually able to get dogs off like those big clunky leashes and harnesses and all that because the dog isn't pulling.
Right.
So that's why we're able to use very lightweight leashes because they're by our side for the most part, you know?
Yes, you want it to be easy.
Want it to be easy.
Getting into e-collar, how do I know which level to start with for my dog? She's a bit on the sensitive side, so we want to make sure I don't make a mistake.
Yeah, so, well, number one, you start on level one. You start on level one, absolutely. So start on level one, hold it down, look at your dog. If you don't see any response, and again, the response that you're looking for is a subtle response. So, like that, right? Like, what was that? Like, not jerking motion, so subtle, okay? So, and this is how I found Alyssa's e-collar level. So, just kidding. So, yeah, so it's level one, hold. Level two, hold. Level three, hold. Level four, hold. Level five, hold. Level six, hold. Until your dog just kind of looks like this, right? And then you're like, okay, that's the level I'm going to use. So sensitive dogs typically are going to be between 3 and a 5. Non-sensitive dogs, you could be like 5 to an 8. But if you're getting into the 10s and 12s and 15s and 20s, something's going on there. Likely the fit is off of your e-collar. Check the fit. If you have a long fur dog, make sure you have the longer contact points, not the actual contact points. Get the comfort pads. If you're using a mini educator, they look like little wings. So if you're a long fur dog and you're getting into the 15s and 16s and 17s and you don't have the wings, get the wings, and then your levels will be much lower. I feel like you need just the preview on the computer here. You just look like you're glowing. I think it's the light and the
light hitting the
white attire. So I was gonna make like a wings joke, like because you're
flapping.
like, well, yeah, kind of. Like, you're an angel.
Thanks. Okay. This is the last question.
Okay.
My dog only seems to react to this one dog in our neighborhood, but is fine with others. Is it smell related?
My opinion, no. Most of the time, it's not smell related. Dogs, yes, can smell very far and wide. However, in my experience, it's not to do with smells. Most of the time, it's to do with the individual relationship and the past experiences that dog has had with that specific dog. What have been the past experience been like? And why is that different from the other dogs in the neighborhood? A lot of it is experience based and not really about smell. Smells, yes, dogs use their noses, and certainly they can pick up on certain smells from a very far, long ways away. But likely that's not driving the root reactive nature for why your dog is reacting towards this particular dog.
Remember when we lived in the apartment and we only had Ash, and there was this one guy with this dog, and he would come out of the other apartment building, and Ash would see him from literally up in our apartment building looking out the window, and he would like go like ruff, ruff.
Yeah, and
only to that one dog.
And I can guarantee you, and this is way back when, before this company even existed, when we had dog walkers and things like that, I can guarantee you that there was a negative, something happened, because that they always walk their dog all day long. They were always out. Guarantee you that didn't just happen out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right. And this is not, again, we had very lovely dog walkers. Okay. Not saying that, I'm just saying that likely either when we weren't around or, this one over here, who knows?
Okay.
All right. I'm just kidding. But something happened, because that just doesn't happen out of nowhere. Right. Dogs just don't wake up one day and go,
yeah, it was like so strange.
But what I'm saying is it was not strange,
I know, but
right?
we just didn't know.
Right.
But like it's just funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
Well,
it's not funny, obviously, but it seems odd, but there is nothing in my career so far, and we've worked with almost every breed and every behavior at this point, that surprises me. Okay?
Right. I'm going to correct that. I didn't mean it. At the time, it was funny because we didn't know any of this information.
No, I agree with you.
Right? And it was just like so random.
I agree with you. So, but fast forward all these years now, absolutely the reason why I'm saying this so strongly is because once I have enough information from the owner, usually almost 99.999% of the time, I'm like, that's not surprising at all. But I can see how, like way back when, like what you were saying, when we were going through that, absolutely. And especially when you're not around all the time too, dogs develop like these things when you're not around too. So who knows, something could have happened. So why that dog and not the other dogs in the neighborhood? Who knows? Maybe something happened when you weren't around. Maybe that dog got loose and your dog was in the yard. Who knows? I'm just making things up right now, but that's how these things happen. Either something happens when you're not around, or you weren't aware, or you weren't there, or somebody didn't give you the right information, or you got the wrong story, or somebody didn't want to tell you the truth, or whatever. But it usually happens from a past experience that dog had with that specific dog. And it could have just been like a split moment, right? It could be the other dog's energy. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about a physical interaction. It could be about something your dog is perceiving, right? I don't like that dog's energy, or I don't like how that dog barked at me the other day, or I don't like how that dog looked at me, or I don't like that. So it could be a myriad of things. And that's really that. So
interesting.
But yeah.
Those are all the questions for this evening.
Very good questions. All very good. I'm going to open up the chat box here. And if we don't get any other questions, then we will... God, remember in meetings where like people would say, oh, we'll give you the time back. We'll give you the time back. You go to like 20 minutes.
Now you get 10 minutes time back.
You get like 10 minutes time back. I would cringe when I'd hear that.
I mean, I hear it all the time.
It's like, I'm going to give you the 10 minutes back. Huh. I'm like, oh, thanks. This meeting was meaningless anyway. So you wasted 20 to give me 10.
No meeting that I have actually is meaningless.
Okay. Well, you have to say that.
Why do I have to say that?
I don't know. Because you could have, maybe there are spies on this podcast.
Oh, maybe.
Well, anyway. All right. Well, everybody have a great evening. I hope this was helpful. We will be coming to you next Thursday live as well. And have a great night. Happy training, and see you next week. Good night.